Imagine a time long, long ago. A time when giant ice sheets covered much of our planet. This was the world of 40,000 years ago. We often picture our ancient ancestors as simple hunter-gatherers, perhaps chasing mammoths across frozen plains. But in the warm, tropical islands of Southeast Asia, a very different story was unfolding. Here, early modern humans were not just surviving. They were thriving in a world of water. They were becoming masters of the sea, developing skills so advanced that they challenge everything we thought we knew about our deep past. These were not people who simply waded in the shallows. They were ancient mariners, venturing out into the deep blue ocean to hunt its most formidable creatures. These early islanders possessed a remarkable ingenuity. They looked out at the vast, seemingly endless expanse of the ocean not as a barrier, but as a place of immense opportunity, a larder filled with sustenance. To harness this resource, they developed technologies and strategies that were truly ahead of their time. They were engaging in deep-sea fishing, a practice we once believed was a much more recent invention. This required not only courage but also a profound understanding of the natural world. They had to know the seasons, the currents, the behavior of the fish, and how to build vessels capable of carrying them far from the safety of the shore. It is a breathtaking testament to human creativity. The fish they were catching were not small, easy prey found near the coast. They were targeting large, powerful, fast-swimming pelagic fish. These are creatures like tuna and trevally, fish that live in the deep, open waters of the ocean. Catching such animals is a difficult task even today, with all our modern technology, our powerful boats, and sophisticated gear. To think that people were successfully hunting these ocean giants tens of thousands of years ago is simply astonishing. It forces us to reconsider the cognitive and technical abilities of our ancestors and to appreciate the depth of their connection to the maritime world they inhabited. This discovery paints a vibrant new picture of our prehistoric relatives. It moves them from the familiar landscapes of savanna and forest into the dynamic and challenging environment of the open sea. It reveals a community of people who were not only intelligent, but also organized, cooperative, and incredibly skilled. They were boat builders, navigators, and expert anglers. They were pioneers who learned to conquer the ocean, an achievement that would pave the way for the great human migrations across the seas that were to come. Their story is a powerful reminder that the journey of humanity has always been one of exploration and brilliant innovation. How can we possibly know what happened so many thousands of years ago? The past does not speak to us directly. Instead, it leaves behind faint whispers, tiny clues scattered in the earth, waiting for us to find them. Archaeologists are like detectives, carefully searching for this hidden evidence. In caves and ancient rock shelters on islands like Timor-Leste and the Philippines, they have found a treasure trove of information. These clues come in many forms: ancient bones, discarded tools, and even microscopic traces left on the tools themselves. Each piece, no matter how small, helps us to reconstruct the lives of these ancient seafarers and understand their remarkable world. One of the most important types of evidence is the fish bones. Over thousands of years, people would eat their catch and toss the bones into their campfires or onto the floor of their cave homes. These bones became buried in layers of soil, like pages in a book of time. By carefully excavating these layers, scientists can identify the species of fish that people were eating. When they found the bones of deep-sea fish, like tuna, it was a revelation. These fish do not live near the coast. Their presence meant that people must have had the ability to travel into deep water to catch them, a truly significant discovery. Alongside the bones, archaeologists find the tools that were used. Stone tools, sharp flakes of rock, are incredibly durable and can survive for millennia. But these tools hold more secrets than just their shape. Scientists use a fascinating technique called traceology, or use-wear analysis. They examine the edges of these stone tools under powerful microscopes. This allows them to see microscopic scratches, polishes, and residues left behind from their use. They might see the telltale marks of cutting plant fibers to make rope, or the distinct polish that comes from scaling a fish. These tiny traces are like fingerprints, telling us exactly how a tool was used. Putting all these clues together creates a remarkably detailed picture. The fish bones tell us what they were catching, the stone tools tell us what they were using, and the microscopic traces on those tools tell us how they were using them. For example, finding tuna bones in the same soil layer as a shellfish hook provides strong evidence for deep-sea fishing with hooks. It is this painstaking detective work, combining different lines of evidence, that allows archaeologists to confidently say that people were skilled mariners 40,000 years ago. It is a story told not in words, but in bone, stone, and the faint echoes of ancient actions. When we think of ancient tools, we often picture objects made of stone or bone because those are the materials that survive the long passage of time. However, some of the most important tools used by these early mariners were made from something far more fragile: plants. These people were masters of fiber technology. They knew which plants had strong, flexible fibers, and they knew how to process them. They would strip the leaves or bark, soak them, and then twist or braid the fibers together to create something incredibly useful: cordage. This simple-sounding material, in the form of ropes, lines, and threads, was the foundation of their maritime success. This invisible toolkit of ropes and nets is almost never found by archaeologists. Plant fibers decay and disappear very quickly in tropical climates, leaving no direct trace behind. So how do we know they existed? We find clues in other artifacts. The very first fish hooks, for example, would have been useless without a strong line to attach them to. Similarly, the presence of very small fish bones, from species that often travel in schools, strongly suggests the use of nets. A single hook could not catch hundreds of tiny fish at once, but a finely woven net could. The evidence is indirect, but it is compelling. The creation of these materials required great skill and knowledge. People had to know the properties of different plants. They needed to know which ones would create a line strong enough to hold a struggling tuna, and which would be flexible enough to be woven into a net. They developed techniques for twisting fibers together, a process called plying, which dramatically increases the strength of the cord. They also must have mastered the art of knot tying, creating secure connections for their hooks, nets, and even for building their boats. This was a sophisticated body of knowledge, passed down from one generation to the next. This fiber technology was truly revolutionary. It was the key that unlocked the resources of the deep ocean. Rope was essential for lashing logs or bamboo together to construct rafts and boats, the very vessels that carried them away from shore. Fishing lines allowed them to deploy hooks into the deep, dark water where the largest fish lived. Nets enabled them to harvest entire schools of smaller fish, providing a reliable source of food for their communities. Without the simple but ingenious technology of turning a plant into a rope, the story of these ancient mariners might have been very different. It was their mastery of these perishable materials that powered their expansion into the sea. On the island of Timor-Leste, nestled in the waters of Southeast Asia, archaeologists made a discovery that sent ripples through the scientific community. In a coastal cave called Jerimalai, buried deep within layers of earth, they found something tiny but of monumental importance. It was a fish hook, exquisitely carved from the shell of a sea snail. What made this hook so special was its age. Scientific dating revealed it to be between 16,000 and 23,000 years old, making it one of the world's oldest known examples of a fishhook. It was a tangible link, a direct piece of evidence connecting these ancient people to the act of fishing. This was not just any fishhook. Its curved shape and sharp point were clearly designed for a purpose. It was not a decorative item. It was a highly functional piece of technology. Finding it was like finding a key to a locked room. Suddenly, the theories about early fishing were no longer just theories. Here was the proof, held in the palm of a hand. The people of Jerimalai were not just gathering shellfish from the shore, they were actively designing and manufacturing specialized tools to catch fish. This single small artifact spoke volumes about their intelligence, their planning, and their deep understanding of their marine environment. They knew that a curved piece of shell could trick a fish. But the story in Jerimalai Cave gets even more incredible. In layers of earth far older than the hook, dating back an astonishing 42,000 years, scientists found the bones of the fish these people were eating. And these were not just any fish. Over half of the remains came from deep-sea pelagic species, including tuna. This was the smoking gun. People were catching and eating tuna thousands of years before the date of the oldest hook found so far. This tells us that they must have been fishing in the deep sea long before they invented the hook, likely using other methods we can only imagine, perhaps baited lines, gorges, or nets. The discoveries at Jerimalai fundamentally changed our timeline of human innovation. They pushed back the date for complex maritime activity by tens of thousands of years. It showed that the people who first arrived on these islands were not simple foragers. They arrived with, or very quickly developed, a sophisticated toolkit for exploiting the sea. The combination of the ancient tuna bones and the later beautifully crafted shell hook provides a stunning snapshot of technological evolution. It is a story of a people continually innovating, refining their tools and techniques over millennia to become ever more successful masters of the ocean. Thousands of kilometers to the north of Timor-Leste, in the vast archipelago of the Philippines, another piece of this ancient maritime puzzle was uncovered. On the island of Palawan, in a place called Ilicave, archaeologists found more evidence of this early relationship with the sea. Here, much like in Jaramalai, the dig revealed layers of history preserved in the cave floor. And within those layers, dating back over 12,000 years, were the telltale bones of tuna and other large open ocean fish. This discovery confirmed that the deep-sea fishing tradition was not an isolated event in one location, but a widespread practice across the islands of Southeast Asia. The evidence from the Philippines adds crucial depth to our understanding. It shows a consistent pattern of behavior across a huge geographical area. Early humans, upon arriving in these new island homes, quickly adapted to their surroundings and learned to exploit the rich resources of the surrounding waters. The challenges were immense. The waters between these islands can be deep and treacherous, with strong currents. Successfully navigating and fishing in this environment required not just bravery, but a sophisticated set of skills. The people of Palawan, just like their distant cousins in Timor-Leste, had clearly mastered these skills. The archaeological sites in the Philippines also highlight the importance of teamwork. A single individual would find it nearly impossible to build a seaworthy boat, navigate treacherous currents, and land a powerful, struggling tuna weighing dozens of kilograms. Such an endeavor would have required a group effort. Some people would have been responsible for building and maintaining the boats and equipment, like nets and lines. Others would have formed the fishing crew, working together to paddle, manage the lines, and haul the heavy catch aboard. This level of cooperation points to a highly organized and social community. This widespread evidence helps us to see the bigger picture. The settlement of island Southeast Asia was not an accident. It was a deliberate process, driven by people who possessed the technology and social organization to travel across open water. They were explorers, colonizing new lands and bringing their maritime culture with them. The finds in the Philippines, when combined with those from Timor-Leste and other sites, paint a portrait of a connected world, a network of island communities sharing a heritage of seafaring and a reliance on the bounty of the deep ocean. It was this ancient maritime adaptation that laid the foundation for future human migrations across the Pacific. Hunting a large pelagic fish like a tuna from a simple handmade boat is an incredibly dangerous and difficult task. It is nothing like casting a line from a riverbank. These are battles of strength, endurance, and skill, fought far from the safety of land. The fish themselves are immensely powerful. A mature tuna is a torpedo of muscle, capable of swimming at incredible speeds and diving deep into the ocean's depths. Hooking one would have been just the beginning of the struggle. The real challenge was in tiring it out and bringing it aboard without being pulled into the water or having the boat capsize. Imagine the scene: a small crew of fishers in a dugout canoe or a bamboo raft, rising and falling on the ocean swell. They have paddled far from shore, using their knowledge of currents and landmarks to find the right spot. They lower a baited hook on a strong handmade line. Suddenly, the line goes taut with a violent jerk. The fight is on. The fish would have pulled with immense force, towing the small boat through the water. The fishers would have had to work together, skillfully playing the line, letting it run when the fish dived and hauling it in whenever they had the chance, a process that could take hours. The risks were enormous. A sudden lurch from the powerful fish could easily capsize their small vessel, throwing them into the deep water far from land. The line, stretched to its breaking point, could snap at any moment, meaning the loss of both the precious catch and the valuable, laboriously made hook. Sharks, attracted by the struggle, would have been a constant threat. Every trip was a gamble, a high-stakes venture where the potential reward of a massive food source was weighed against the very real danger of not returning at all. It was an activity that demanded not only skill, but incredible courage. This is why the achievement is so significant. It demonstrates a level of risk management and strategic thinking that is truly modern. These were not desperate, reckless gambles. They were calculated expeditions undertaken by experts. They understood the dangers and prepared for them. They built their boats to be as stable as possible. They crafted their lines and hooks to be as strong as possible. And they relied on their collective experience and teamwork to overcome the power of their prey. Successfully hunting these ocean giants was the ultimate expression of their mastery over their marine environment. No single person could have accomplished these amazing feats alone. Catching a giant tuna or navigating between islands required something more powerful than any individual's strength. It required teamwork. The success of these ancient mariners was built on a foundation of cooperation and careful planning. Long before a boat ever touched the water, the community would have had to work together. This process started with gathering the right materials. Some people would have searched the forest for the perfect trees for a dugout canoe or the best bamboo for a raft, while others collected the specific plants needed for making strong ropes and nets. This collaboration continued in the construction phase. Building a boat that could safely travel on the open ocean is a complex task. It requires shared knowledge and many hands working in harmony. People would have needed to fell trees, hollow out logs with stone tools, and perhaps use fire to shape the wood. If they were building a raft, they would have had to lash heavy bamboo poles together with countless meters of handmade rope, ensuring every knot was secure. At the same time, others in the community would be busy making and repairing the fishing gear, weaving nets, carving hooks, and twisting endless lengths of fishing line. Once out on the water, teamwork became even more critical for survival and success. A fishing expedition was a coordinated effort. A crew would have had to paddle in unison to propel their boat across the waves. They would need a navigator, someone with a deep knowledge of the stars, the currents, and the distant silhouettes of islands, to guide them to the fishing grounds and safely home again. During the hunt for a large fish, everyone had a role. Some would manage the boat's position, while others handled the powerful line, and more still would be needed for the final exhausting effort of hauling the catch aboard. This spirit of cooperation was about more than just efficiency. It was about community. The food brought back from a successful fishing trip would have been shared among everyone. The risks were taken for the benefit of all, and the rewards were enjoyed by all. This shared purpose would have strengthened the bonds within the group, creating a resilient and highly organized society. It was this ability to plan, coordinate, and work together that allowed these early humans not just to survive in their island world, but to truly conquer its greatest challenges and reap its richest rewards. The incredible maritime skills of these ancient people were not instinctual. They had to be learned. This vast body of knowledge was a precious inheritance, carefully passed down from one generation to the next over thousands of years. An elder would teach a child. An experienced fisher would mentor an apprentice. This was education in its purest form, a living library of information essential for survival. Children would have grown up by the sea, watching, listening, and practicing the skills they would one day need. They would learn which types of wood float best and which bamboo is the strongest. This education would have been intensely practical. A young person would learn how to identify the right plants for making rope simply by handling them every day. They would practice twisting the fibers, learning the feel of a strong, even cord. They would be taught the art of tying special knots, patterns of loops and twists that would hold fast under the strain of a fighting fish or the pull of an ocean current. They would learn how to read the weather in the clouds and the feel of the wind on their skin. They would be taught to read the ocean itself, to understand its currents, its tides, and the subtle signs that might reveal the presence of fish deep below. Navigational skills were perhaps the most complex knowledge to be passed on. Without compasses or maps, these mariners navigated by the world around them. Elders would have taught the young to steer by the sun during the day and the stars at night. They would have memorized the positions of constellations and how they moved across the sky through the seasons. They would also have learned to navigate by the rhythm of the ocean swells, which can indicate the direction of distant land, and by watching the flight paths of birds that roost on land but feed at sea. This was a mental map of the ocean, built from generations of observation. This continuous transfer of knowledge was the engine of their culture. It allowed for constant improvement and innovation. A new way of tying a hook, a better design for a boat, or a discovery of a new fishing ground could be incorporated into this shared body of wisdom and passed on to future generations. It ensured that the community not only retained its essential survival skills, but also built upon them. This legacy of learning is what transformed these early settlers into the world's first deep-sea fishers and some of the most successful maritime explorers in human history. Their greatest tool was not stone or shell, but the knowledge they carried in their minds. The discoveries in places like Timor-Leste and the Philippines have done more than just teach us about ancient fishing. They have fundamentally changed the way we think about our own ancestors and the grand story of human history. For a long time, we pictured early modern humans as being primarily land-based people. We thought that complex thinking, like planning for the future, creating sophisticated technology, and undertaking risky journeys, were behaviors that developed much later, perhaps with the dawn of farming. These ancient mariners prove that this view was far too simple. They show us that cognitive complexity, the ability to think, plan, and innovate, is as old as our species. The act of deep-sea fishing 40,000 years ago is not the work of a simple mind. It requires a deep understanding of cause and effect. It requires the ability to plan multi-step processes, from building the boat to making the line and hook. It requires abstract thought to imagine where the fish might be and to navigate across a seemingly featureless ocean. It proves that the people who lived during the Ice Age were just as clever, creative, and capable as we are today. This new understanding also reshapes our view of human migration. It was once thought that early humans only spread across the world by walking over land bridges that were exposed when sea levels were lower. But the settlement of islands Southeast Asia, and eventually Australia, required crossing significant stretches of open ocean that were never dry land. The maritime skills these people possessed, the ability to build seaworthy boats and navigate, were the key to this expansion. They were not accidentally washed out to sea, they were capable and deliberate explorers, the pioneers of ocean travel. Ultimately, the story of these ancient fishers is a story of human potential. It reminds us that for as long as we have been human, we have been explorers, innovators, and problem solvers. We have always looked at the horizon, at a mountain range, or an ocean, not as a barrier, but as a challenge to be overcome. The courage to venture into the deep sea and the ingenuity to succeed there is a profound testament to the human spirit. These clever mariners of the distant past have left us an inspiring legacy, showing us that the drive to explore and understand our world is one of the oldest and most powerful forces in our shared human story.